Welcome to What's Cooking in Sports with former NFL defensive end Gary Burley. Now get ready to find out what's up, what's in, and what's going down in sports with some of the biggest names on the field, on the court, and in the business. Gary, it's all yours.
Hey, welcome to What's Cooking in Sports. We've got a great show today. We've got former NFL All-Pro Steve Wallace from Auburn. We got Lars Anderson doing the NASCAR update. And of course, Isis Jones and Lionel James are going to sit here and tell us what's going on. So stay right there. We'll be right back.
The power of Brought to you in part by Alabama Power. Always on.
Watching, waiting for something to amaze me. That's when it happened. Right in front of me.
You haven't seen it until you've seen it in Charter HD. Call now to add Charter HD for only $5 more a month and watch all your favorite programs in HD. Charter, let it all in.
Welcome back to What's Cooking in Sports. On the phone, we have NFL All-Pro and former Auburn standout, Steve Wallace. Steve, how you doing today, buddy?
Doing outstanding, Gary. Good. I'm excited about having a chance to talk to you guys.
Well, we feel the same way, and we're going to jump right into it. We're going to talk a little bit about your alma mater and Lionel's alma mater, Auburn.
Okay, I'm excited to talk about it.
Well, listen, let's start out with this. There's going to have to be a rebuilding, as we all know. As two former players, I'm going to ask you both, where do we start the rebuilding process?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's all about winning, and we got to get back on the right track as far as winning. I think all of our fans out there have had a great deal of appreciation for Coach Chiswick and all that has transpired over the last 4 years, especially with winning a national championship. Jake Jacobs, he's a personal friend of mine, so I'm in his corner, so to speak. I'm just hoping that we get it figured out as far as winning. I mean, because the bottom line, that's what we fans want. That's what former players want. That's the lifestyle that we've established at Auburn, and that's what we want to have going again.
Well, Steve, now the question I want to ask is, let's put ourselves in the position of us being coaches. What area would we focus on to rebuild that winning edge that you just mentioned?
Well, I think it's pretty simple. As far as it starts with the quarterback. You see in the past schools like Miami, Florida State, and the University of Florida, the years that they've really struggled is the years that they've had problems as far as the quarterback. I think some of the things that you can do to help simplify this is that you give them easy throws early on to establish the confidence, and then it has to be a big part as far as the players. The quarterbacks themselves have to take time out and look at your Tom Brady, look at your Peyton Mannings, and study these guys and study the things that they do. I think sometimes I see Mosley back there, and he's not as quick-footed as Frazier. And Mosley needs to take time to study out how Tom Brady eludes the pass rush. I mean, he steps to the side, he keeps the player alive. He believes that, his offensive lineman will keep pressure on a guy. A lot of times, if you anticipate that, then yourself, Gary, as a defender, that you can't quite grab that quarterback sometimes if that lineman continues to push it. And a lot of times, Mosley will just go down. And where if he learns how to sidestep the pass rush, then he can keep a play alive. And then with Frazier, you got to study. You got to study this game. You got to work hard to be better, to establish that confidence. And once this guy gets confidence, then I think he can become a better player. And what I mean by that is that you got to understand situations. You can't be have a situation where you're third down and you're on the 22-yard line, you take a 14-yard sack, and now your field goal kicker comes in and he's going to kick a 48, 49-yard field goal. So for most part, that's where it starts, right there at the quarterback position.
What do you think, Lionel?
I think you got a point right there, Steve. But if we go back to tradition and we get into tradition, and if I ask you the question, what do you think Auburn football means? And there are such things as stars and star makers. And really what you're saying and everything you said is the creating of the star. And on that football field, basically the star is the quarterback. Okay, now if you remember back going into your freshman year, your sophomore year, yeah, there was Bo Jackson there was Brent Fullwood, there was myself at the bottom of that list, there's Tommy Agee, there's a whole list of running backs. So now when you start thinking of football and then trying to help the quarterback out, would running the football be one of the easiest ways to give him some help?
Without a doubt, Lionel. Like you said, Auburn has a reputation of being running back university with you, Bo, and the rest of them. And the whole thing is that takes a lot of pressure off. But I think that most teams are looking at Auburn and saying that I don't care how good your running backs are, we're going to play a lot of guys up on the line of scrimmage, and we're going to force you, your quarterback, to win the game. And with that, it's just tough. I mean, because a couple years ago, with our offensive coordinator, they were doing all these different run fakes and fake and fake and fake. And everybody knew eventually that you got to throw the ball. And one of the games that come to mind is the Arkansas game 2 years ago, where we faked and faked and faked. And we had to throw the ball, and you got to learn how to look off the safeties in order to come back to the receiver that you want. And so a lot of these things have to be developed and practice. But like you said, there again, you could use the running game, but every now and then you have to throw that ball.
All right, well, to go one step with this, get into a little scheming of blocking, would you be a coach that would basically take the offensive line and do man-to-man blocking? Or would you, and I know you played on that island as a left tackle, or would you go more toward the zone blocking, trying to get the 2-on-1? Which situation would you like to better help the offensive line to give the quarterback more time?
Well, like you said, with that zone blocker, especially a lot of times you can have a mismatch with a lot of guys at the college level, and it gives a guy with a lesser talent, it gives him help. It gives him a level of confidence and where he can believe that he has support. And so, like you said, with the zone blocking, you block to an area, and then you allow the running back to anticipate where the hole is going to be, and then good backs like yourself, Bo Jackson, Tommy Agee, and the rest of them, Brent Fullwood, then they find these holes. The only thing most of these guys, need is a crease. And if you give them a crease, and then eventually they can watch and observe guys on the backside, like defensive ends, if they start to overplay it, then they establish a cutback lane. And so, like you said, as far as the zone blocking, where you dig your cleats into the turf and you come off the ball, you start hitting folks in the mouth, then you set the tone, you establish it. And I think those were some of the things that Coach Dye did back in the day, is that he said, we're going to hit folks in the mouth.
I still always say it goes back to spring practice, summer workouts, molding a team together. And I think one of the big separating parts of everything now, especially in SEC, especially at, like a little small country town like Auburn is, we used to have a athletic dorm, Sewell Hall, which everybody lived in. So now when you live with a person, you sleep with a person, you practice with a person, you lift weights with a person, you know that person. So now when he's gone or he's sick or he's hurt, you miss that person, but there's a bond that's right there. And these days it's changed because now you don't have the athletic dorm, but somehow, I don't care if you got to go bowling with them, I don't care if you got to take them to the movies, take them swimming, do whatever you got to do to create this gel. Because think about it. Steve's my brother. If someone slaps him, he slaps me.
Right.
All right, so now it's not that am I in it. We in this together.
Well, with that said, man, we're running out of time. But Steve, we got to get you back, man. After the end of the season, can you come back on the show and we'll assess everything that Auburn's done to get to the next level?
Oh, without a doubt. I enjoyed. Thank you guys for having me on. Hopefully, I didn't get too long-winded. I had a great time speaking with you.
We appreciate you. Talk to you soon, buddy. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Okay, you ready? Surprise. Yeah! Wait for me.
Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Daddy?
Yeah?
The power of yeah.
Yeah.
Brought to you in part by Alabama Power. Always on.
Waiting for something to amaze me. That's when it happened. Right in front of me.
You haven't seen it until you've seen it in Charter HD. Call now to add Charter HD for only $5 more a month and watch all your favorite programs in HD. Charter, let it all in.
Welcome back to What's Cooking in Sports. Lars Anderson, NASCAR. Looking forward to hearing what he has to say about getting down to the end of the season. Tough race, Texas Motor Speedway. Keselowski, Johnson, good guy wins. Explain it to me.
Well, it was one of the more compelling races of the entire year. For much of the entire afternoon, about 3.5 hours of racing, you had Keselowski and Johnson running 1-2 in different positions there in the front. And what is sort of surprising to me is that Keselowski, who is the younger driver who has never won a championship before, he has the speed in his number 2 car to stay nose-to-nose with Jimmy Johnson. And Johnson ended up winning the race, and Keselowski ended up finishing second. Johnson was able to get around Keselowski on the final restart of the race because Johnson had 4 fresh tires and Keselowski only had 2. But leading up to that, Johnson and Keselowski, they were running down the front stretch, nose to nose, and Keselowski just rammed into the side of Johnson's 48 Chevy, nearly causing both of them to wreck. And Keselowski did that because he was about ready to be passed by Johnson. And so you're seeing as a driver being as aggressive as anyone has been all year. And, Keselowski easily could have taken both of them out, and that would have brought in another few drivers into the championship equation. But as it stands now, there's 2 races left. You have Sunday's race at Phoenix, where I will be, and then 7 days after that, they're going to be racing in the season finale at Homestead Miami Speedway, where I'll also be. And right now, Johnson has a 7-point lead over Keselowski. Everybody else has been essentially eliminated, so it's a 2-man race. And 7 points translates roughly into 7 positions on the track. So if, say, Keselowski is in first place and Johnson is in 8th, then you have Keselowski up by 1. So it's going to come down to, I think, probably the final laps in Homestead. I still like Jimmy Johnson to win the championship. If you look historically, he's got far better career stats at these final 2 stats than Keselowski. But Keselowski, in almost every race this year, has done better than what his career average at that track would indicate. So career averages kind of have to throw out the window when it comes to Keselowski this year. But I think ultimately Johnson and the 48 team will prevail, which will give Johnson his 6th championship. And then he's then within 1 championship of the all-time record, which is shared by Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt Sr. with 7 total.
Okay, 7 points lead. Now, we getting into what I call in football the 2-minute drill. Now, if we get back into that situation where we are at the end of that race Keselowski, Johnson, we got a bump. If it was Dale Earnhardt, I'm trying to get into the psyche of what is going through the race car driver's mind. If I'm that close to the wire, I'm 7 points down, I've got to win this at all costs.
Yep.
Do you get soft? Did he get soft?
No, that was Brad being overly aggressive, and you heard guys up and down pit road after the race saying that Keselowski has a death wish and he's not going to last long in this series, and his life may not last long if he keeps racing like that. Tony Stewart used those words explicitly, and Matt Kenseth was a little bit critical of Keselowski as well, but that's just the way Keselowski has always been. He's a very, very aggressive driver. You would never see Johnson make a move like that. Johnson he's clean, he's smooth. Keselowski is as close to the modern day Dale Earnhardt Sr. as exists on the circuit, and I think you can expect more aggressive driving from him going forward. Now the thing is, Keselowski does not have a lot of friends on the track, so you will see guys who aren't in the championship battle race him pretty hard, whereas they will cede the position and let Jimmy Johnson go. So it's a huge advantage for Johnson because Johnson doesn't have any enemies on the track. And this has sort of been one of Johnson's secret weapons to winning all these championships, is that he doesn't have guys who are seeking revenge on him because he treats everybody fairly on the track, whereas Keselowski doesn't. You remember a few years ago, it was Keselowski who sent Carl Edwards into the catch fence and nearly into the stands at Talladega because Keselowski would not cede any ground to Edwards as they were coming toward the checkered flag at Talladega. So I think you're going to see just very, very aggressive driving, especially from Keselowski over these final 2 weeks.
Okay, now once you start saying aggressive driving, one of my all-time favorite quotes, and this happened about the time of the wreck in Daytona, okay, and Bob Costas was doing an interview, and within that interview, he made the statement to, I can't remember the guy's name, but he said, is it driving on the race course safer than driving in the street? And the guy said, I would much rather race on the racetrack than to drive on the United States interstates. And Bob Costa says, no, there's no way. If you're driving in that car at 190 miles an hour, it is like driving in a casket. And you just said that his life may very well be on the line. So that is a serious statement. And is it that hard that they race?
Well, they're certainly racing hard, and Tony Stewart made that statement a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I mean, you have to remember that there hasn't been a fatality in the Sprint Cup Series since 2001 when Dale Earnhardt Sr. lost his life. So it's not literally a life or death. I mean, at least you hope that it's not literally a life or death situation. But Keselowski has been, as I said, very aggressive. And as the miles wind down that they have to race for the rest of the year, you can expect the intensity level to amp up, especially late in races when it sure looks like it's going to be Jimmy and Brad running at the front, and they're going to be racing against each other. But this is really how you want to see it evolve in terms of the championship battle. You want the two drivers who are at the top of the standings. You want them in the front of the pack, going head-to-head with each other on the track. We haven't gotten that much in the last decade in NASCAR, but we had it last year with Carl Edwards and Tony Stewart, and we're getting the exact same thing this year with Keselowski and Johnson. And remember, now Johnson has won the last two races. This weekend at Texas, he got maximum points. He won the pole, he led the most laps, and he won the race. So, this is a hot race team right now, and they have a history of peaking just at the perfect time late in the season. Jimmy Johnson often goes through slumps in the summer when it doesn't really matter if he's winning races or not. But this year, they're peaking at the perfect time, and with 2 races to go, I like Johnson to win the championship.
There you have it. Lars Anderson, What's Cooking in Sports.
Okay, you ready? Surprise. Yeah! Wait for me.
Come on.
Yeah.
Daddy?
Yeah?
The power of yeah.
Yeah.
Brought to you in part by Alabama Power. always on.
Waiting for something to amaze me. That's when it happened. Right in front of me.
You haven't seen it until you've seen it in Charter HD. Call now to add Charter HD for only $5 more a month and watch all your favorite programs in HD. Charter, let it all in.
Welcome to What's Cooking in Sports. We are back now, and I guess we're going to talk a little bit about the big game this past weekend. Alabama and LSU. What a nail biter. What do you think about it, Lars?
Well, I thought the most compelling image of the night was A.J. McCarron breaking down, overcome with emotion after he had led the Tide down the field with no timeouts to throw the game-winning touchdown pass. I think that is going to be one of the indelible images of the 2012 college football season, especially if Alabama goes on to win the national championship, which I frankly think they will. But a few things were exposed about Alabama on Saturday night. Their defense isn't as dominating as we had all thought. You know, Zach Mettenberger played the game of his life, and you can make the argument that Mettenberger, LSU's quarterback, was the best player on the field on Saturday night. He threw for nearly 300 yards, and he really wasn't helped out that much by his receivers, who dropped a number of very catchable passes. You know, it seems like if you're going to win the national championship, and Lionel knows this far better than me, you have to go through a game like this where, you know, you look at the stats after the game and you wonder how in the heck did Alabama win? You know, they absolutely got dominated, time of possession, total yards. But, you know, it takes one of these real tight games to get through. It seems to me every national championship team seems to have one, and this was Alabama's. And now, barring an emotional letdown this Saturday against Texas A&M, and I don't think, frankly, that's going to happen, even though it was a very emotional game for Alabama. They should have clear sailing into the SEC championship game, and then I don't think I think it'll probably be Florida that they'll end up playing. I don't think Florida will put up too much of a fight, and then on to the national championship game, where I think they'll probably end up facing Oregon.
Well, let me say this, and I'm going to let you get yours in, Lionel. But the defense bent, but it didn't break. And I hate to go back to saying the same old things, guys, but the defensive line did not put any pressure on the quarterback. And that's going to be imperative that happens going into the next game with a quarterback that can run and throw. And then, as you say, looking ahead to the national championship, we're going to have pressure on the quarterback, and we're not getting it. What do you think about that, Lionel?
I think that's a great point, great analysis of that game. But I have to go back. There's three coaches that have affected me in my lifetime, and they all preach the same thing. And Nick Saban is going to be that third guy. First guy I've always heard was Bear Bryant. You know, get us to the fourth quarter, and what you always see is the guys holding up four fingers and saying, "Okay, fourth quarter, now we got you where we want them." Pat Dye did the same thing when he was at Auburn during the glory days. And when you look back at that LSU game against Alabama, and at the end of that game, when they really needed, it was the fourth quarter. So what that tells me is this: there's an off-season program where these guys are getting in shape. They're building muscles, they're strengthening, they're building toward the fourth quarter. A game is not won in the first quarter. No matter what the score is, it is not won in the fourth quarter. All right, now, when I look back at LSU playing, LSU must have used 5 or 6 trick plays. You only get a chance to run that one time. You cannot go back to that. So now when it all came down to it, the fourth quarter, the guys were ready. Now, when A.J. McCarron shows the emotions at the end of the game, that guy just laid it all on the line. He's hurt. He's banged up. He's had some misfortunate things that happened in the game. But now, when his team needed him at the end of the game, he was there, and he laid his soul on the line. You know, I see that. If I'm his teammate and we watch that film and then we watch it on television, you know we're going to watch that game over and over and over again to see what we did wrong. When they see this guy hug his family in the stands, and no one from Alabama ever does that. No one in the history. Joe Namath didn't do it. Kenneth Stabler didn't do it. And here this guy goes over to the stands to get relief from it. He just gave his heart and soul to winning in that football game.
Well, I had dinner last night with my college coach, Johnny Majors, and we watched the game the other night, and I told him, I said, Coach, you know, when you used to tell us stick to your knitting, I know what that means. It means no matter what adversity you face, you keep doing what your execution and you've been taught to do. And that's what Alabama did, and that's why they won that game. I don't care what anybody says. They won that game because they didn't quit.
Well, they stuck to the plan. You know, run it. You know, we made mistakes. We can overcome it. Let's win the field position. Let's let them do their tricks, and pretty soon we're running out of tricks to run.
Lars, what do you think, man? What was your personal opinion about the Alabama Crimson Tide?
Well, just going back to the game, I thought that Les Miles coached as if he thought he had the inferior team. He just he made several gaffes. They going for it when he should have kicked the field goal, attempting a 54-yard kick when he probably should have gone for it or punted and played the game of field position. Sort of taking the ball out of Mettenberger's hands at the end of the game after Mettenberger, in my opinion, showed that he was the best player on the field that night. You know, you really look back and everything that Miles tried, like kickoff included, it backfired. If he just would have played it straight up, I see LSU winning that game. So that I think that's going to haunt them for a while. Looking at Alabama, I think you're spot on. They did not get enough pressure on Mettenberger. And, you know, LSU did everything they needed to do to win that game, but just fell a little bit short. I think we are seeing the building of a legend right in front of our eyes in A.J. McCarron. You know, already has one national championship. That drive will be remembered for a long time in Tuscaloosa and in the state as sort of a career-defining drive for A.J. McCarron. And, you know, who knows? He's got a chance to do something really remarkable at Alabama, and that would be go for 3 straight national titles. But you know, he struggled for most of the night, but he came through when they needed it. What surprised me was, you know, for 4 straight plays on the final drive, he targeted Norwood. LSU wasn't covering Norwood, you know, and why they didn't shift their defense over to bracket Norwood or at least pay more attention to him is sort of startling. And I know that Barrett Jones, heading into that final drive, had told the coaching staff he thought a screen would work. They picked the absolute perfect time to do the screen. They did it in the face of a blitz. And then you get T.J. Yeldon in open space, and he's so elusive and fast and strong. He's real tough to bring down, and he just strolled into the end zone. And, you know, I watched it with my girlfriend who's a diehard Alabama fan, and she nearly fainted. Like, she just did not think. There was an overwhelming sense of pessimism, I thought, from the diehard Alabama fans because of just everybody thought it was going to be a cakewalk. The line was extraordinarily high. I mean, I told you guys that last week. I thought the line was way too high. And LSU had an extra week to prepare. Their guys were healthy. And, you know, Alabama didn't have that extra week off. And, you know, just everything was there for the recipe for an upset seemed to be right there. But ultimately, McCarron, again, embellished his legend, and it was a great night if you're a Tide fan.
Well, I tell you what, Lars, you're right. I got bruises all over my body from my wife punching me all night watching the game. But that seems like a good place to end. And as I understand, Lars, you're going to be on away for the next couple of weeks, right?
Yeah, I'm heading out to Phoenix on Thursday for the race this weekend, and then be back in Birmingham for about a day, then off to Homestead for the season finale. And hopefully we'll have about a 4 or 5 page story in the magazine coming out of Homestead.
Okay, well, listen, we'll talk to you next time.
All right, take care, guys. Good seeing you.
Thank you, buddy.
I'm really concerned about the performance, but we're still cheering no balls, and we're still behind our team a lot of times.
A Okay, you ready? Surprise. Yeah! Wait for me.
Come on.
Yeah.
Daddy?
Yeah?
The power of yeah.
Yeah.
Brought to you in part by Alabama Power. Always on.
Watching, waiting for something to amaze me. That's when it happened. Right in front of me.
You haven't seen it until you've seen it in Charter HD. Call now to add Charter HD for only $5 more a month and watch all your favorite programs in HD. Charter, let it all in.
We are pleased to have Edward Butler, former Tennessee player, but now financial planner, on the show today. Edward, how are you doing, my friend?
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, I tell you what, we cannot have a Tennessee player on the show without talking a little bit about Tennessee. Where are you guys right now?
Well, I think a lot of us are really concerned about the performance, but we're still cheering Go Vols, and we're still behind our team. A lot of times that the fans put the coach on the hot seat, but the real fans and the players, we're behind them because we want to see them win. We knew of the commitment that we made as players up 10 years ago, and we wouldn't want our fans to get off the bandwagon and to join somebody else's. So as a former player, I'm still encouraging for us to be able not only support the coaches but the players.
What do you think needs to be repaired on Tennessee, and what do you think needs to be repaired offensively and defensively on the Auburn team?
Well, from a defensive standpoint, I think it's guys knowing their responsibility and being able to do it. Game about football is mostly accountability. Me doing my assignment day after day, week after week, play after play, year after year. And that's how you're able to get those wins and losses. That's where the results come in. If each player can play every down with that level of intensity and accountability, I think things can change real fast in Knoxville.
I think at Auburn, let's go to the basics, the fundamentals. You know, teach footwork, teach hat placement, teach shooting the hands and getting people off of you if you're a defensive player. I think attitude and teaching has to be done. And I understand when I played down there, we would practice 6 hours at a time. NCAA rules don't permit that anymore, so it takes a special coach to be able to get a lot done in a short period of time. That's why they always go out with a practice schedule. Period 1, these 5 minutes, we're gonna do that. Period 2, period 3. But if you got a list and there's 25 periods on here, you probably at Auburn need to go down to 16 and teach fundamentals.
Okay.
Get to the football.
Well, I agree with you, and you know, you and I have had that conversation many, many times. I don't know if you knew this or not, but Lionel and I have a youth program where we teach kids how to market themselves for college scholarship consideration. And one of the things, and one of the reasons why we wanted you on today, was to talk a little bit about, you know, college scholarships, preparation, and securing them as well for funding. But fundamentals is something that we just stress, and I don't see a lot of that today when guys progress from high school to college and beyond. And you've got to have the basic fundamentals. You know, you got to have footwork. Like Lionel said, you got to be able to rush the passer. You got to be able to do all these things, and we're not seeing a lot of that. Do you think that fundamentals are something that goes out the window?
At times they do, but I remember my high school coach always telling us, whenever in doubt, you go back to the basics. That's been a token phrase for generations. And I think a lot of players have become insecure about not only their abilities, but their